Hello and welcome to the WNBA edition of the Super Show. I am your host, Walt, aka Dub Deuces 85 on all social media platforms. Rolling solo today, I'm going to be covering the massive 6-game WNBA slate on DraftKings. We got lots of stuff going on today. Summer League is wrapping up. We've got 2-3 days left of that. That's been a really big edge. So I will be providing cores and player pools in our premium Discord for those of you that want to play. Lots of good stuff there. Injuries and late scratches. There's been guys who are 50% owned, like Evan Mobley in this showdown for the Cavs. Just yesterday was like 55% owned, even though he was rolled out like 5 minutes prior to lock. So just a really big edge for Summer League. So if you guys haven't been tailing me on that or playing that, I would really highly encourage you to do so and get that money today. There's 3 different slates plus 2 showdowns for that. So certainly we'll be, tweeting and posting in our Discord of that. For those of you who are here for the WNBA stuff, let's rock and roll. We are back from the midseason break. The Olympics are over. There's lots of stuff going on, and let's just jump right into it. If you guys have questions on the right side of your video feed there, you can post in the live chat, comments, concerns, anything. After each game, I'll take a look at that and answer anything that you have. As far as contests go, there is the 2K to first, which is pretty decent, 470 entrant, and then a bunch of other stuff. I would probably encourage you guys to look at the head-to-head lobby today too and consider cash games. There's going to be a lot of late scratches. There's already some injuries announced. It's going to be people playing that are maybe just, they're bored or they want something to do. It's a Sunday. And I think you could take advantage of some folks that are maybe more casual WNBA players. So that would be my advice to you guys off top. Let's jump in here. First game, Seattle Storm versus the Chicago Sky. Odds on this one, the Storm are plus 215. They're actually 6.5-point dogs. You don't see the reigning inaugural Commissioner Cup champions being underdogs too much here. But against the Sky, they're minus 260, over under of 160. The reason why they are dogs is because they're going to be without their superstar, Brianna Stewart. She will be sitting out for the old San Antonio Spurs special load management. She was in the Olympics playing like 38 minutes a game, just really heavy workflow in the Olympics. She was averaging like 12 more minutes than any other player on the team. So she'll be out. She played a lot in the Commissioner Cup too. They did blow out Connecticut, so they got a little bit of a rest, but obviously they don't really care if they lose this game to the Sky, or they think their talent is good enough to still compete, which it is. And then Sue Bird, the 40-year-old ageless wonder, she is out for the load management as well. So that's 2 key players, high minutes, high usage players, right out the door immediately. Now, being that it's a 6-game slate, we're going to have opportunities to have some spread out ownership. We're going to have some sneaky plays. We're going to have some, less duplicate lineups than we would normally see on our typical 2 to 3 game slate. But with that being said, we are going to have some major chalk, and anybody who is a serious player is going to zoom in on this right away and play Jewel Lloyd, who's just priced there at 8.9K. With Stewie and Bird out, she becomes the de facto alpha #1 option. She's pretty much the second option already. Even when Stewart and Bird play, Bird's kind of taken more of a backseat and just an assist / a 3-point shooter. Doesn't really score a lot other than those 2 things. Lloyd is going to have usage rate of a Marcus Howard-like proportion. I like to use Marcus Howard as whenever I talk about someone with a high usage, because anybody who paid attention to Marquette a few years back know that his usage rate flirted with 40-45% a lot, and he was taking 25 plus shots. So I'm not necessarily expecting 30 shots from her, but she's going to play 35 plus minutes. People that maybe dabbled in the women's Olympics DFS are going to be misjudging of her and say, oh, well, she barely played, or she didn't look that good in the Olympics. She's not going to play that well. But if you're a true blue WNBA grinder like myself, you're going to know that Lloyd in this situation is an absolute lock. Her type of production is of a 10K plus player today. So at 8-9, you're certainly going to want to get her in. She's averaging, over 30 fantasy points per game, 17 points per game, pretty solid overall. So Lloyd is a really obvious choice, should be highly owned if people know what they're doing. I'm so used to Summer League where people don't know what they're doing that it might be shocking for me when I do see the ownership here when the slate locks. And then secondly, Ezi Magbegor. So Lloyd benefits obviously from Bird being out and the usage for Stewart. Magbegor directly because of Brianna Stewart. Magbegor is kind of like the future of the team, I'd say, as Bird retires and Stewart gets older. Ezzy's going to be a big time force for this team. Saw in Australia, she had foul issues, but when she was on the floor, she was an elite rim protector. Against the Americans, I mean, obviously Griner is unguardable, so trying to guard her is tough. But Asia Wilson only scored, I think, 4 points against Ezzy when Ezzy was actually guarding her. And Asia, of course, is a very good scorer, one of the best players from the USA. So her rim protection is very elite. The Chicago bigs are kind of floaters in terms of they like to be on the 3-point line. They're not really bangers. So I could see Ezzy really eating hard today. At 6.2, it's another no-brainer play. Expect her to be heavy chalk. You see there in a couple games prior to the break, in which she played, 23 minutes there against LA. She scored well over 30 fantasy points, and then 21 minutes against them, she scored over 18 fantasy points. And then she's had games of 22 and 15 minutes, 18 and 10 minutes. So a really high FPPM fantasy point per minute type of player. 6'2" is just a way easy play. So I don't care. I'm Mr. Leverage. I say that every show. But when there's good chalk, I'm certainly going to eat it. Jewel Lloyd and Ezzy Magbegor represent the top two plays in the slates. They're way too cheap. Now, if you want some leverage off of that, you're running multiple lineups, you want, maybe some storm exposure that you think are going to get some high minutes that people are ignoring. Jordan Canada is a really good option for that. She's only 5'7". Anytime Canada has played, last year in the bubble for the women, when Bird was out, she missed a significant amount of time. Canada stepped up, and there was games in the prior years where she had to cover for Sue Bird as well. And when Bird is out, she has averaged just about 10 points per game and almost 6 assists per game. Obviously, those numbers are a lot worse when Bird is playing, but we're in that situation where Canada should step up, will probably take over the primary ball handling duties. Jewel Lloyd's more, she prefers to be on that off-ball spot anyways. So Canada could rack up a ton of assists. Like, she could be a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, even higher assist player today. And she is capable of scoring. This guy's perimeter defense is pretty solid. I definitely would say that between Diamond Shields and Courtney Banner. But she is a really nice, strong play at 5'7". That's probably not going to get the ownership she deserves. Now, being that it's a 6-game slate, I'm not trying to fully stack on Seattle because I want exposure to the other games, but a nice GPP lineup would be a mini stack of 3, maybe even 4 players when you consider Mercedes Russell. So I'm definitely in on Canada in some of my lineups. And then also Mercedes Russell, she's 1K higher than Ezzy Magbegor. She's having a nice season. She's learned how to play next to Brianna Stewart really well. So I'm expecting some pretty heavy minutes out of her as well. She's more of that traditional, back to the basket type of player, decent jump shooter. She should be able to, potentially exceed value higher than Ezzy or score a higher amount of points, with the field on Ezzy. Maybe you spend that extra 1K on Mercedes. So 4 very playable options on the Storm. And then if you really want to get into that deep GPP territory, Katie Lou Samuelson's there at 6'5", Stephanie Talbot at 4'2", but you're really getting into plays that are not going to be in your main lineup. More so your GPP alts. Weird. They have Lauren Jackson here for some reason, and she's played for like 8 years. It's very odd. But yeah, those are the 4 main with Lloyd and Magbegor being the top play. So really quite easy. As far as Chicago Sky go, pricing's pretty fair. I mean, Parker at 10.9, I wouldn't be touching that today, even without Stewart. I think the front court defense of the Storm is still plenty good enough, to keep her from paying off an almost 11K price. Courtney Banner stood at 10.5. She's the epitome of a GPP play. She legit could be a 20-point scorer. She could put up 50. The Storm's perimeter defense has been their weak link, and that's with Sue Bird playing most of the minutes because her defense has gotten significantly worse this season, and you've really been able to tell. So Canada's defense may actually help to deter Vandersloot from putting up a 50 today. So I'm not paying for either one of them. If I'm looking at Sky players, Khalia Copper at 7'5", she's been, a pretty heavy scorer. I'm always on Diamond to Shields in some capacity at 6'6". She's an interesting play. She battled through some injuries last year, some ineffectiveness. She had to change her role on the team with Candace Parker joining them. And I think she's starting to figure things out. 6'6", she could very easily pay that off. But again, she's just a GPP play. When we have such obvious value like Ezzy Magbegor, or Mercedes Russell. You don't necessarily need to go to Diamond to Shields, but expect, sub 5% ownership. And if you're planning to run 5, 6, 7, 8 lineups out there, I would get exposure. Only other player really I'd maybe look at is Azurá Stevens at 5'8", but I'm not sure she'll get enough minutes to really matter. There's just far too many other obvious spots to target. I'm going to stay away from Chicago here. Next game, Connecticut versus Dallas. It's minus 180 for the Sun. They are minus 4.5 against the Wings, 156.5 over under. For the Wings, they will be without Satou Sabally, one of probably my favorite, if not, top 3 for sure, favorite players in the league. She's got an Achilles injury that she's dealing with. That's never good. I guess it happened during the Olympic break, during the training or something. So hopefully she's able to get back, because she would have been a nice play here at 8-6. So they've kind of baited us here. The Wings pricing, knowing Sabally's out, is very cheap. There's nobody above 8-2. It's a really bad matchup for the Wings because the Sun defense is one of the stronger units in the league. They are coming off a straight ass kicking at the hands of the Storm. They're going to be coming in this angry, and they're going to play much, much better. The Wings are also a very deep rotation. So even with Satou gone, they're still running 10-plus players at times. RK, Ogunbowale is only 8'2". That's a really interesting GPP play. I have her written up in my guard player pool in the article that we just released. She's certainly, interesting there. She's just a straight chucker. She has the green light. She gets 35, 36 minutes. I can see her just obliterating that price tag. But turnovers are a concern because the Sun force a high number of them. And if RK is, having an off night shooting, she's just not going to get there even at that price. But I do think she's a high level GPP play. Instead, I'm looking at forwards. With Satou out, we're looking at Izzy Harrison, 8K, or Kayla Thornton, 7K. I think if you're running multiple lineups, the easy decision is to just split them to get your exposure there. If I'm only choosing one, Kayla Thornton would be my preferred option. She is more of a 3-and-D type of player. So she can shoot the 3. She's a really, I'd say, above average rebounder, and she can score down low. So, she's right around 20 fantasy points for 9 points, 6 rebounds, just solid overall. Fouls could be an issue. She does have foul trouble at times. If she's ending up having to guard Jean-Claude Jones, that's definitely going to be a problem. But 7K kind of helps alleviate some of those worries. Izzy Harrison is a much better offensive player than Kayla Thornton. That's the main, key cog of her game. She averages almost 10 points a game, just about 5 rebounds, right around 21 fantasy points per game. Minutes should be there. Anytime she's played closer to the 30-minute side, she has put up over 30 fantasy points. 2 of her last 5, she scored 38 and 44. So she's definitely got upside here. The Sun, like I said, are a tough matchup. They did play Connecticut earlier with a full roster on June 22nd. She scored 14 fantasy points. So she's far from a lock. 8K is a bit of a high price when you consider the other options. I know they're different positions, but RK for 200 more than Izzy, it would be very, very silly in your main lineup to play Izzy over RK, even though, like I said, they're different positions. So keep that in mind if you're planning to get some Wings exposure. Other Wings options, Maureen Mabry, she's a straight chucker as well. She may, step in and see a significant minute boost here with Sabally out. That's a lot of offense down the drain. They're going to need to, get her in there. But keep in mind, she has a point range of 5 to 50. Very wide range, only 7'2". Don't hate her, but she won't be in my main lineup. And then I'm not touching Charlie Collier, Mariah Jefferson, Taisha Harris. They're all decent value plays. But again, the Wings rotation is way too crowded. The trade deadline will be coming around the corner. There is rumors and chatter about the Wings playing some of these bench players more to try to showcase them for a possible trade. They've got all these assets. They need to get a third superstar in there behind RK and Satou. There's not a lot of willing teams there, but they do have the assets, like a Bella Olere or Chelsea Dungy or, Alicia Gray. There's people that teams would want to possibly make a 3 or 4 for 1 type of trade. So we might see them be even deeper than usual, even without Satou Sabally, if that proves to be the case for showcasing trade partners. All right, so Connecticut, I think it's kind of a no-brainer. If we have this value, the number one option typically on a slate, if it's not Brianna Stewart, is Jean-Claude Jones. She's 11.8, so we're paying a hefty price tag for her, but she's just an absolute monster. Didn't have the greatest game against the Storm, so I would expect a big bounce back from her. Somebody who's averaging almost 45, 46 fantasy points per game, 21 and 11. She's just a big time producer of fantasy points. So I'm pretty much going to be having her in my lineups. I think if it's a decision between her and Griner, I think that becomes a little more dicey. But if our favorite two players are both under 9K, like Ezzy, like Jewel Lloyd, we should be able to fit both pretty easily. So I'm definitely in on Jonquil. I think that I'm going to end up being really quite chalky, and on a 6-game slate that hurts my soul a little bit because I do like having players that aren't as high owned, obviously. But I got to eat chalk with somebody like this coming off a bad loss. I think I kind of dabble in projections for WNBA. We don't have them to the public because they're kind of, rough. But I mean, you don't have to be a mathematician to know she's probably going to score 50 today. So I'm going there if I can. Brianna Jones and Dewana Bonner are both, upwards of 9K, 10K. Probably going to leave them on the back burner today, even though I think they can produce. The three-headed monster of the Sun are very strong and do majority of the damage. They account for over 65% of the usage on the team, which is a very high rate for just 3 players. It doesn't need a lot of scraps for anyone else. But if I was going to use somebody as a value option, I guess I would look at someone like Kayla Charles at 5'6". In extended minutes, she has shown her ability to put up 25 plus fantasy points, but I think you need to keep your exposure to the big 3 here for the Sun. It's really just Jean-Claude Jones for me. Washington versus Las Vegas. Mystics are still going to be without EDD. She's going to wait at least 1, maybe 2 more games before trying to step back out there. Right now, it's minus 11 for the Aces. They're 11-point favorites, minus 700, 172.5 over under, the highest on the slate. Very typical for Aces games. They're one of the most potent offensive attacks in the league. They're constantly in the highest totals as well. So the Mystics are going to be, like I said, without EDD. Shavante Zealous is out. They are getting Erica McCall back, so that's one of their bench pieces. So they're a little bit wonky. I think Sydney Reese is back from her injury, so there's just a lot going on here. I don't think that I really want to touch any of them. They did sign Shatori Walker Kimbrough again. She was on their title team from 2 years ago for an end of season contract after 2 straight 7 days. So she's there. With Zealous out, she could see some extended minutes. 4-4, it's a fine play, I guess, if you really need the value. Really, the team is obviously Tina Charles. She's overpriced at 11-2. I don't know why you would play her over Brittany Griner, who we're going to talk about in the Mercury game next, especially against the front court of Asia Wilson, Dearica Hamby, and Liz Cambridge. Maisha Hines-Allen's name has been linked to some potential trade talks. I saw one that said maybe trading to Atlanta for Kennedy Carter, which would be an interesting trade. So we could see, I'm a big believer in these, these type of things where teams will showcase a player, for trades or, try to increase their value. So we could see MHA play quite a bit. She has some knee injuries heading in, but she's getting the full go. She's only 8'9", making her a pretty strong GPP play. Even next to Charles, she has put up 50 plus fantasy points in the past. Last year in the Wubble, she was a superstar without Charles. Averaging almost 40 fantasy points in the last month of the season. And then you got Ariel Adkins, Natasha Cloud, Leilani Mitchell. Really not touching any of them. The prices aren't that great. The Mystics rotation had been targetable for many weeks heading into the break because they were running 6 or 7 players. Now, even with EDD and Zealous out, it looks like they're still going to have a pretty larger rotation than we're accustomed to, 9, maybe even 10 players. And like I said, the Vegas defense is a lot stronger than I want to target. On the Vegas side, Asia Wilson at 12K. I hope that people that played the Olympics chase her. I did, I poke around, on Twitter and Discords just to see what people are saying. And during the Olympics, the women's event, people were obviously rostering Asia Wilson at a high rate, 80% in some slates. So if they come over and want to dabble in the WNBA thinking it's as easy as the Olympics was, we may see people just play Asia. And if you play Asia, you're not getting Jonquil, you're probably not getting Griner, or maybe you pair 2 of them and then you play a bunch of values depending on your build. So I do hope people go that way to bring the ownership down from Jonquil and Griner. Obviously still a good play. I still think Liz Cambridge is the better overall player. I know Wilson's the reigning MVP and she looked great. But Cambridge she's a better 3-point shooter. For me, she's a better rim protector, and I just think that overall she does more to impact the game. She is back. She had that some kind of scuffle or something that happened during the All-Star break, so she had to pull out of the Australian Olympic team. But she is back full strength, ready to go for Vegas at 9-8. She's a great GPP play. She rarely gets owned above 10-15%. So again, if you're running multiples, I definitely like some Liz Cambridge. The primary options here, though, Kelsey Plum, 8-1, and Jackie Young, 7-6. So guard play, you can really do something strong if you play Jewel Lloyd, who's under 9K, and then one of these guards. You could even look at Chelsea Gray, who did good in the Olympics at 7-8, but I would prefer Young or Plum personally, because Gray's more of the distributor. Kelsey Plum and Jackie Young are coming off gold medal, the inaugural 3-on-3 women's gold medal they just won, riding high from that. Plum is a 6. Well, I guess De'Ara Candy's a 6 woman, but Plum comes on the second unit, runs it, and then she plays the fourth quarter a lot next to Chelsea Gray. At only 8-1, she's a very good player for like 4 or 5X, especially in this matchup against the Mystics. Their defense, especially on the perimeter, has been pretty susceptible to giving up high fantasy totals. Now, they do force turnovers at times, but the guards against them have been putting up 30-plus fantasy points pretty consistently. You see Plum's averaging over 10 shots per game. 13 points, 25 fantasy points. She's just a really high level scorer. She gets herself to the free throw line, and she's never met a shot that she didn't like. Former Huskies love her. So 8-1, I could see a backcourt duo in your main of a Plum and Lloyd, or a Jackie Young and a Lloyd. I think that's a really strong high floor for you, and it's going to make you, on the right side of the cash line at the end of the day. Jackie Young may be more of a GPP play just because she has a lot more highs and lows than Kelsey Plum. We've seen her put up 40, then we've seen her put up 9. This is not a defensive matchup that I worry about with her. I think she'll be just fine. Like I said, coming off of that Olympic gold medal that she just won, she's going to be feeling herself a little bit, and I think we'll see her, take a good 9, 10, 11 shots. So 7-6, she's just a really good, overall value. And then they have Jisoo Park priced like it's the Olympics. Jisoo Park rarely plays. So that's another one that I hope if people are playing from the Olympics, maybe they caught that women's basketball fever. 8-4 is a ridiculous price for Jisoo Park in a non-Olympic role. She's the Liz Cambridge of her Olympic team, but she's still a 8-minute per player role player on the Vegas team. Doesn't help that they signed Kaya Stokes right before the break. She is in play at 5-6. She had been starting prior to the break. You see 2 of her last 3 games were over 20 minutes, including a 29-minute performance against Minnesota. So at 5-6, she's definitely a good value. If you're trying to stuff your lineup at the top, you got Ezzy, you got your Lloyd, you got your Jean-Claude, and you're trying to fit one more stud, but you just don't quite have the value. Kaya Stokes is fine. 20 to 25 minutes. She's a big part of their plans. It's amazing that a team like Vegas, who literally has $980 in salary cap to the dollar, I checked this, meaning they could sign somebody for like one day. To get Kaya Stokes is ridiculous. So Vegas is a real player. So I like her, definitely. Atlanta versus Phoenix. This one's going to be an interesting game to track for injury purposes. Phoenix minus 245 on the money line. They're 6-point favorites, 164.5 over under. Diana Taurasi, as of now she's playing. She probably won't be out, but we saw her. She was ailing during the Olympics. She's been hurt on and off for 2 years now. It's almost time for her to hang it up. She's just about as old as Sue Bird, been in the league a long time, great player, but there's a really good chance that she's on a cap, maybe not an official announced minutes cap, but maybe one where they're not going to play her, the normal amount of minutes. And if that's the case, with Bria Hartley still out for the Mercury, players like Shea Petty, Sophie Cunningham also become value options. If you just want to play all high-priced forwards and stack studs with Lloyd, and you don't want to play a Plum or a Young in your second guard spot, you can go down and look at someone like Shea Petty at 6'1", or a player I usually like, especially when Taurasi is out or limited, Sophie Cunningham at 4'7". Cunningham, when she's played, or entered the starting lineup and gotten over 20 minutes, has been a very high-level fantasy performer. She's a good on-ball defender. She can hit the 3. She's very active. I wish they played her more normally. But Shea Petty also, if Taurasi plays, then Shea Petty is probably still fine. You see 3 of her last 4 games prior to the break, she played over 20 minutes. And at a high level, she's averaging 21.1 fantasy points per game in those last 4. So definitely a fan of one of them. We'll have to track the news. I know with Summer League and some of you guys playing the NFL preseason, there's MLB going on, all kinds of stuff on this Sunday. You may find it hard. That's where you want to use the Discord, our premium room, where I will be posting that information for you. So utilize us. If you're not a member already, definitely consider it, because I will be posting about Summer League injuries, and I will be posting the status of Phoenix, or any team for that matter, as I expect more scratches or people to be out throughout the day. That is one of the later games. It's 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific. It's a couple hours after the slate starts. So just be aware of that news potentially, coming down the pipeline and possibly shaking things up. Griner, Brittany Griner, 10-8. If you guys followed me on Twitter, I talk about Griner all the time during the Olympics. For some reason, she was playing under 20 minutes. When they finally did start playing her during the knockout stages, 25 minutes, 28 minutes, she was destroyed. And she was like way under on 20% compared to Asia and Stewart's 80%. 10-8 is way too cheap for her. She is an amazing player. I'm a big Griner fan. She's really unguardable at the women's level. The Atlanta Dreams front court has been atrocious. They did add Candace Dupree, former Fever player. She was on the Storm to start the year. It's a bad deal for the Storm because she's a little washed up. I don't like to talk negatively about players, but she's not great. Her defense is non-existent. She can hit jumpers, but it's another big to crowd the front court for Atlanta that can't play defense. So none of them are going to be having a very fun time guarding Griner. Griner is an auto lock for me. She is a core 3. Those of you who are watching who aren't subs yet, I'm giving out that core for you guys. Either way, Brittany Griner's a part of it, most definitely. She's averaging over 40 fantasy points per game, just about a double-double, 21 and 10-ish. During the Olympics, she was averaging well over 35 fantasy points. She had games where she played 18 minutes and almost scored 40 fantasy points during the Olympics. So she's facing a front court that has to be just dreading life right now. Looking at the rest, Kia Nurse at 10-2, she's priced like it's the Olympics, kind of comical, like she's back on Team Canada. She has not the same role on this team as she does with Canada. So I would go ahead and fade her there. Instead, look to Skylar Diggins-Smith, who 10K is a little high, yes. But again, if you're running multiple lineups, SDS has got to be, in your player pool. She's coming off the her first Olympics. She got gold. She was kind of, just a role player. They didn't play her a lot, just getting that taste. With Taurasi and Bird likely never playing in the Olympics again, I hope. But again, they're 50. Diggins-Smith is going to be a big part of their future. So she's going to be coming in and just looking to prove something. She's averaging just under 35 fantasy points per game. She's a really strong ball handler. She does make some bad decisions with the ball at times, like getting herself up, picking up her dribble or, double clutching and just throwing the ball up. So she will get turnovers, but on DraftKings, that doesn't hurt you as much. She just gets a lot of easy assist opportunities when you have a player like Brittany Griner under the hoop to pass to. So I like Diggins-Smith as a low-owned GPP play for sure. And then the last player, Brianna Turner at 7-9 for the Mercury. She's interesting. High-level rebounder, averages more rebounds than points, almost 9 compared to 7 points. She has had games in the past when Griner was out. She put up 40. Next to Griner, she's found herself a nice niche. She's averaging, lately, the last month of the season, just under 27.5 fantasy points. Again, this Dream front court is very, very bad on the glass, defensively, pretty much all aspects of the defensive side of the game. So I can see Turner doing some things at 7-9 with again, little to no ownership. And then for Atlanta, Kennedy Carter is still out. It's very dysfunctional in Atlanta. Right before the break, there was some fighting going on amongst teammates. They did suspend Kennedy Carter. They word that they're trying to shop her. So she's going to be out still to this game for conduct detrimental to the team. So there's an upgrade to some of these guards, but still it's a mess. Cheyenne Parker, who had just been starting to heat up a bit from the break, she is now out for the rest of the season due to pregnancy. That does happen in the women's basketball game. Explain that birds and bee stuff to you guys on the next show. And then Tiffany Hayes, she is also going to be out. Tiffany Hayes is probably my favorite Dream player. And I like using her a lot. She's always low on, but she's going to be out. So the Dream are looking, I guess the only knock on the Mercury is that they may end up destroying the Dream so hard that they give Griner a break, which does maybe warrant fading her, but I'm not going to overthink it or outsmart myself. But they are down 3 very significant pieces. Courtney Williams is probably going to take a boatload of shots, 20 plus shots easily, 9-5. She doesn't offer a ton else. She will have games of, 8 rebounds, 7 assists occasionally, but she's mainly going to get most of her points from scoring. She went into the break on a really poor run, averaging under 23 fantasy points per game. Typically, she's been averaging over 33 for the season. I'm not on her, but you could do worse for a player like Courtney Williams, sub 10K, where the next 3 highest usage players are all out. She's got to be looking pretty happy and feeling herself going in this one, knowing she's going to take a lot of shots. I would instead look at someone like Crystal Bradford at 7'8". This is another option at guard to pair next to our core Jewel Lloyd. With all these injuries, suspensions, pregnancies, everything going on, Bradford has stepped in seemingly out of nowhere and just taken, the starting role and made it hers. She's probably going to play over 30 minutes. She's been averaging a pretty high number of minutes, 16 for the season. But if you look at the last month, that's been way over 25 since stepping in the starting role. She's had games of 40, 29, 21, and then there was a blip in there, 16 against that Vegas defense. Very high usage rate. Her fantasy point per minute was at one point almost 3 points per minute. She was just going crazy. Very active player, very aggressive. She may find life a little tough against that front court of Phoenix. She does have foul issues. I know she's a slip guard, but she plays more of a wing forward position. So there is risk here with her. But I mean, if you're, like I said, maxing or looking for some various options to have outside of the chalk, then a player like Crystal Bradford would definitely be in play there. And then the rest, the forwards are kind of a no-fly zone. They're cheap. Liz Willie, Mo Billings, Tiana Hawkins, and Candace Dupree, who they just added. They're all going to continue to cannibalize each other as they've done all season. They're going to play 18 to 20 minutes. It'll be very hard for any player on the Dream to make value, even at a 5K price tag, facing a front court like the Mercury in those kind of minutes. The only one that, maybe could be like, you could say is a sneakier play is Ari Mcdonald, the rookie out of Arizona that a lot of people fell in love with last Final Four. She led Arizona to a really nice tournament run where she put her name got herself drafted in the first round. If she could see 20 plus minutes, if the Dream are if they're ready to stick a fork in the season, they're not quite there, but with all these players out, if it gets ugly early, I could see McDonald playing a significant amount of minutes at this 5K with very little to no ownership. All right. Feeling good about this, guys. This is a good slate. Feeling real good. Next game here is New York versus Minnesota. We're looking at 6-point favorites for Minnesota. They're minus 245, 162.5 over under. This is a game I think is going to go way under the radar. I don't think I see a lot of ownership here. Starting off, it is a revenge narrative for Laisha Clarendon. She was on New York before. They cut her unceremoniously this year. She's a high-level player. She's starting at guard for Lynx since she joined them. It just kind of speaks to the salary cap of this league, how bad it is, and how teams are up against it, that they couldn't even trade a player like Clarendon. They had to just waive her for nothing. Anyways, revenge narratives. I don't have like an exact percentage. You guys are watching me, you're big math guys. I'm not going to sit here and be like, 89.9% of the time, the revenge narrative works, but it works at a high number. I would say it's at least half the time, if not more, we've seen. I should go back when I have time, if that ever happens, right? And check all these revenge and former games from team players that just left the team within a year or two, because it feels like more often than not, players just destroy their older teams. We've seen it a lot, especially the last month before the break. So Clarendon at 7-7 is a pretty decent, GPP option. Natalie Onchanway is back. She just played for Team Canada. She was injured with the Lynx before. She's been cleared and will play. That's going to muck up that bench rotation a little bit for the Lynx, which means Dantas, Carlton, Shepard, Banham, Dangerfield are all going to be hovering between 12 to 22 minutes. Really no fly zone there for me. Top players are Sylvia Fowles and Rafisa Collier. They're priced like it. Not great Olympics for them. They weren't used that much. Don't be fooled by that if you're just now starting to play WNBA. They are the top dogs on this team. And that New York Liberty front court has been very bad. They've actually been the worst team in the front court all season long, even more so than Atlanta. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a player like Fowles, who is pushing towards 40 as well, but still playing at a high level, who averages 16 and 10, have a pretty nice game. Collier, on the other hand, she had a rough Olympics. I wouldn't say my confidence is shaken in her, but I don't see a place for her on my team as of right now, even though I do like this matchup. The good news for New York is Natasha Howard, who they acquired in the offseason from my Seattle Storm. has been cleared and will play. I believe she was removed from the injured list, so we'll see when the starters come out. But everyone's talking like she's going to play. She's actually an interesting play overall. I would say borderline main team viable at 10 or 7.5, which is cheap for her. She performed like a 10K player for the Storm whenever Stewart was out. Even next to Stewart, she was performing at a high level. She's only played in 2 games so far this year because of continual injuries, but she is averaging over 24 fantasy points during that time. She plays in an offense that's very fun to watch. The Liberty play at a high pace, run and gun style. Everybody, all 5 positions can shoot the 3. And they just lack the rim protection, which is why bigs continue to hurt them. Howard is a former defensive player of the year, multi-time. So it's definitely going to help having her back to slow a player like Sylvia Fowles. So I like her. Once we see starters and stuff, I may get some exposure there. Rebecca Allen is questionable for them. She was over with Australia playing in the Olympics. She had a very rough Olympics, hurt her stock tremendously. She was the play for a while. She's putting up 30 and stuff, but she's really kind of regressed a lot. She's overpriced, even if she does play. It's just the big news if she was to sit. Kylie Shook would become somebody that was a good play. And bear with me a second, guys. All right, there we go. Kylie Shook at 6'9". She's been the starting center with Howard out. She's had games of 25 plus fantasy points several times in her last 10. So I definitely think, she would be in play with Howard back still as long as Allen's out. But I think you're getting a little too cute if you go that direction. Highest usage player on the team is Bet Laney at 9.4. It's a fine price. The Minnesota defense is really good, top to bottom. I don't typically make a habit to target against them unless we're looking at a showdown or a 2-gamer. We have a full 6-game slate at our disposal, so I'm not going to be targeting, against Minnesota. I don't think that's a winning play at a very high amount of the time. They also want to start to see, more minutes out of Leona Odom, Dee Richards, some of these younger players that they're very high on. Right now, Liberty are in the thick of the playoff race, so they might not do too much tinkering. But that 4th and 5th spot's been kind of a revolving door of players. You can see them still continue to maybe experiment a little bit. Sabrina Ionescu is really cheap at 8K. I'm curious to see if her ownership balloons a little bit for name recognition alone. She had been on a minutes cap heading into the break because of coming off the serious injury that made her miss most of last season. She's had games where she looked really good, and she had games where she just looked worn out or that injury was wearing on her. So the 8K, it feels like a little bit of a trap set by DK because 8K Sabrina, wow, she's been over 10K lots of times. But I am kind of cautiously looking at that one just because I still don't know if they're going to throw her out there full minutes, especially after a month-long break where there's going to be some players who are really rusty. I could see, maybe them taking it easy with her. And then Sammy Whitcomb at 8.8 is just, she's too expensive. And even Rashonda Gray, who had been a nice value play for us before the break, is out of play now, 6'4", and Howard back. So this isn't the most glamorous game of the day. Expect this to be low owned. If you want to have a game stack or you're somebody who does that, this is the one you want to definitely look at for ownership purposes only. But just be advised, you may be a little underwhelmed with the results. And then the last game on the slate, Indiana Fever versus the LA Sparks. Sparks are -5. It's a 155.5 over under. Injuries just decimating both teams. Start with Indiana. Betty Hittar, the unicorn, as we like to call her. She's a big from international overseas waters, and she is out. She's got an injury. She can hit threes, and she's a good defender, so that hurts the Fever definitely. Chelsea Perry is out. Kaiser Gondzic, their draft pick, who they reached on, is out for personal reasons. So those are some pieces out, and then they're going to be without Jontel Lavender as well. So they're down 4 players. They did sign Emma Cannon, who is in the player pool, but I think for the wrong team. So so she's listed on the Sun, but not the Fever. So don't play her, even if you see her starting, because they won't credit you the points and she's not on the right team. If she was on the Fever listed correctly, should actually be probably one of the top value plays of the slate. So just be advised about that. There's not a lot to like here, man. Jessica Breeland at 8.1 has been a chalkier play. She's been pretty much the most consistent, I guess, fantasy option. You see 3 of her last 5. She scored over 20 fantasy points. Stat sheet suffer, 7-7-3 type of games. She took 14 shots against Atlanta before the break. I wouldn't expect that to continue, but with so many players out, She's going to have to do a little bit of more damage. Kelsey Mitchell's fine. She's a high usage player, over 27% usage. Takes double-digit shots every single game. Sometimes she takes 20. So I can potentially see that because the Sparks defense isn't that great. And then Trm Mccowan, who the coach of the Fever is really idiotic with minutes. If McCowan could handle 30-plus minutes, I think she would absolutely dominate the slate. You see she had 3 straight 34-plus performances heading into the break when she did get big minutes. But there'll be times where sometimes she'll randomly play 18 or 22. They may not have that option to play her less minutes because they're down so many players. So she's definitely in play for GPP. As far as value goes, or maybe sneakier options, I think you can look at Victoria Vivian's at 4.6, and then the youngster Aaliyah Wilson at 3.5, who will be on nobody's roster. 2 games ago against New York, this was last month, of course, she played 19 minutes. Game after that, she played 8. Now that they're down further, reading some of the team beat write-ups and some chatter on Twitter and the various places I poke my nose around, it does sound like Aaliyah Wilson could potentially and will play closer to 20 minutes today with all these injuries. So, I mean, at 3.5, it allows you to get some higher power players. And even if she, as long as she doesn't blank you for 0, you'll be okay with like a 5, 6, 7 fantasy point performance as long as your pay-ups all, melt the slate. For the Sparks, they are still going to be without Shanae. So Shanae Wnba is going to be out still. She hasn't been a factor anyways. Kristy Toliver, another one of the ageless wonders in this league. She is listed as questionable officially. The latest report, though, from the team is that she is expected to play. So that mucks up the, the guard rotation for them a little bit. And then Nneka finally is available to play. Nneka, she's been out for a month, 2 months. So this is going to help because the Sparks have really looked like a poor team. Derek Fisher has looked like a very poor coach. A lot of people said he ran off Candace Parker. He has the pieces. Erica Wheeler is a high-level scoring guard. Nneka, we know what she's about. She's an MVP type of player. Zowie B, high-level rebounder, 3-point shooter. Brittany Sykes, high-level defender. So they have pieces. It's just he has a rotation similar to the Indiana coach where he'll just randomly not play somebody at long stretches. So I would be concerned about using anyone from this game. It is that late night hammer. I'm obsessed with late night hammer games, especially in college basketball. That's something that I have a real problem not incorporating. I know it needs to be something I remove, but that is something that weighs on my mind. Just because I hate sitting there and watching people catch up to me. I think if I were to use someone, even with Nneka back, and this might be a mistake in the long run, but I mean, they went out and got her, former Fever player and revenge narrative, Lauren Cox. She is 5'2". She was playing some pretty big minutes heading into the break. She had 2 games in her last 5, over 20. 11 plus in all of them, and then 2 were 14 and 19. So she's playing pretty decent minutes. I mean, I wish that she was like in the 4K range, obviously, but if that just falls into that 5.2 range where it's like a last player in, or it's that really random salary amount where you're not sure what to do with, you love the rest of your lineup, plugging in someone like Lauren Cox could work. They obviously brought her in to use her. Having the Nneka back would actually be probably a benefit for her. I mean, she might lose a little usage here or there, but the defensive attention is going to clearly be on Nneka, Amanda Zowie B, and Erica Wheeler, which allows Cox to kind of, patrol around the painted area unchecked. She can upper rebound. She hasn't shown it so much lately, but she can shoot threes. She has been a decent rim protector, and she's a good on-ball defender. She does have medical conditions with diabetes that, she does sometimes not able to go for long periods of time, or she has to take her insulin. So there is times where you can tell she's holding back. But I do feel like if there's a late night exposure that I want to have, so not paying up for anyone in this game, we've already established that, I think it would be her. She's just, I don't know, she's just really good. And then Taya Cooper at 6'5", Dwight Howard's former Flame. She is actually a really good player when getting the minutes. Anytime Barry Fisher has played her 25 plus minutes, she's completely shattered it with 4x plus scores. So this is just a really ugly game. There's going to be a lot of rotating pieces. Both teams have players out. You're going to be wanting to certainly have your best plays in prior to that game. If you're heading into that New York and LA game set with lots of PMR, I think you're doing the slate wrong, honestly. All right, so core wise, you guys know Brittany Griner, Jewel Lloyd, and Ezzy Magnamore. Starts your lineup with a strong trio. You can figure out the rest from there as we talked, but those three are all strong plays that I would be very shocked to see them not at minimum make 3.5x. We're shooting for much higher, 5x plus, definitely a possibility with them. Let's pull up some prize picks. Here, let me check the YouTube real quick. Lauren Cox or Kaya Stokes. I'd probably go Stokes in that situation. Yes, Lauren Cox or Kaya Stokes, just because Stokes' minutes are going to be safer, especially if that game turns into a blowout. Stokes is going to play somewhere between 18 and 22, pretty much guaranteed. She's even been starting. Whereas Cox won't start, and her minutes with Naneka back are a little more murkier. Sorry. I haven't had enough coffee this morning, so that's where I would lean. But I like both. Prize picks plays, my three top prize picks plays of the day. I have Brittany Griner over 9.5 rebounds. I think we're going to see a big 12+ rebound game out of her. Jewel Lloyd over 30.5 fantasy points. And now this is as of 45 minutes ago. I'll pull up the update here. So if those numbers have started to move a little bit, just ask me in Discord and we can talk it through. And then Mercedes Russell over 19.5 fantasy points. I think, obviously with Russell and Lloyd, they're going to see big benefits of Stewart and Sue Bird being out. I've already talked about that. And I think those points are just too low. I didn't see, unless they've changed it, I didn't see one for Ezzy Magbagor, or else I probably would have hit the over on her as well. Yeah, there's nothing for Ezzy. If that pops up, though, before game time, you can hit the over on Ezzy, definitely. But those are my three favorites. We do have a promotion going on right now. Your first 2 months with yourfielderschoice.com are half off. So instead of the $50 price that you would normally pay for 1 month, it's $25 each month. So basically think of it as you're getting a month free if you pay that $50. We offer cheat sheets, top plays, prize picks, breakdowns. We have Discord only live chats that we do. Every sport that we offer, from esports to Aussie football, CFL, we do MLB, WNBA, we did the Olympics, we're covering Summer League. We do news in the premium room. So that includes, late injury scratches, lineup news, anything that you would need to get an edge over the field that's late breaking. We always make sure that as we're getting that info, we're feeding it into our Discord. Sometimes that's to the detriment of our lineups because we want to make sure we're taking care of you guys. So, sometimes those Summer League lineups are coming out 2 minutes before lock. So it's a scramble, but we do our best to help you out. And yesterday, if you rolled with us, you would see the benefit, like I said, with players who are out being 40 to 50% owned in main slates and showdowns, which is crazy. So Summer League breakdown will be in the Discord in a premium room for the early and main slates. I'll give a player pool for that. I'll be available on Twitter for any WNBA stuff, which I'll be posting. Pete's got some MLB stuff down the pipeline. We also had a preview show of the ACC. College football is about 2-3 weeks out. ACC football preview on our YouTube channel here. So be sure to check that out. Pete and I do have an SEC show planned for you in the next day or so. A lot of stuff to talk about in the SEC. And then, of course, a CFL show midweek, breaking that down. It's a low-scoring week in CFL. We still cash. Week 3, I think teams are finally going to start figuring out. We've seen a lot of rust, but we're breaking that down for you. If you're watching this video right now, I appreciate it. If you could hit that like button for us, helps us with the algo, gets more our stuff seen, which allows us to provide you even better content and on a more consistent basis with shows. So, and expect college basketball, which a lot of you mess with me for, when that drops here in the next couple months, 4 or 5 shows a week. I'm going to be hitting a very busy schedule with that because I want to make sure that we're ahead of the field on all of that stuff. Thank you for Mafa for getting this together with us early. I hit him up in a late notice and he took care of us. Make sure that you guys, if you're not signed up for Prize Picks, use the YFC code to get some special bonuses. Prize Picks Summer League, we've been smashing. We are 8-3 this week on Prize Picks. The CFL video last week did 5-1. This one was a little bit more of a struggle. I think it was 2-3. But we'll be back with more Prize Picks stuff. That is one of our main focuses for you, those of you that do the Prize Picks thing. So appreciate all the support of the live watchers and on demand. Thank you very much. You guys are amazing for the continued support. Let's go out there and win some money today. Lots of sports. All right. See ya.